All right, welcome in. Mount Polumbus Speaks here. We got a special edition scouting report. Denver Broncos face off against the Atlanta Falcons this weekend. Game will be played at 2:05, as it always is, Mountain Standard Time here for the Broncos home games. And this is a pivotal game for the future of the Denver Broncos at the remainder of their season. If the Broncos want to make the playoffs, my personal hot take, it comes down to the Atlanta Falcons game. This is an absolutely enormous game for the Broncos. Is there a path to the playoffs if the Broncos don't beat the Falcons? Yeah, of course there is. But it gets exponentially more difficult. There are a handful of games left that you circle and you say, okay, those are all very winnable football games. And then there's a handful of games that are going to be challenging, right? This is one of those games that could go either direction. But if it goes in the Broncos' favor, I believe it will set them up for success the remainder of the season. So let's dive into this thing. I'll dive into it more on the back end of this thing about why I think it's so important that the Broncos actually beat the Falcons. And there's a lot of things that go into it. But before I even get to that, why don't we just set the stage here, tell you what we got coming up here, what the Broncos are facing off against. Obviously, the Broncos got to get over the Chiefs game, and that's priority number one. That is an emotional loss that takes a lot out of you as a team. Obviously, there's some specific individuals that are going through a lot. Alex Forsyth is going through a lot this week, but I like the way the team has bonded in that locker room after that Chiefs devastating loss. So I'm excited about this game. Look, this Atlanta team is coming into Denver, and what should be interesting conditions. Shouldn't be too terrible, but definitely not a overly nice day either. 51 degrees out there on Sunday with light wind. So that will not be a huge factor in the game, I don't think. Of course, it's Colorado, and things can always change. According to Vegas, this game is more or less a coin flip. The Broncos are slightly favored, 2.5 points, so they do get the nod. That is mainly because they're playing at home. If the Broncos usually get 3 points just for playing at home. So you take that 3 out and it's 2.5. Vegas is telling you this is a coin flip game. And that makes sense because the Falcons are a very, very similar football team to the Broncos in a lot of ways. They're capable of beating just about any given team on any given Sunday, and they're capable of losing to just about any given team on any given Sunday. Sounds a whole lot like this Denver Broncos team, right? Well, as we face off against the Falcons, there's going to be a handful of players that the Broncos are going to have to keep their eyes on. Excuse me, let me change this slideshow really quickly. Okay, let me back this up, get back to the right guy. Okay. All right. We'll start out with the quarterback, Kirk Cousins. I am Kirk Cousins super fan number one. If you listen to my show, you know that Kirk Cousins is a dangerous quarterback, man. A very underrated quarterback, and he is dealing this year. Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, to me, very similar QBs. Okay. They're going to put up crazy yardage any given year, and they're liable to lose you a football game or 3 per year with some untimely interceptions. But Kirk has got it going on out there. Look, Kirk is throwing for 2,634 yards already this season, throwing for 17 touchdowns already this season. But he's also throwing for 8 interceptions. So the touchdown interception ratio that you're looking for in the NFL, it's always got to be about 2-1. He's hovering right about that 2-1 mark, 17 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. But for elite quarterbacks, you would like to see it much higher than 2-1. 2-1 would be a great ratio for Bo Nix when the season's all said and done. So Kirk is, I believe he's got the second most passing yards in the NFL of any quarterbacks, and they're doing that in large part because they've got a tremendous running game. Okay, where they've got one of the best running backs in the NFL, Bijian Robinson. Okay, this is a guy that had a lot of hype coming out of college, and although the numbers might not necessarily scream everything that you think it's going to be, at times he's doing it this year. Okay, 748 yards. Dude's averaging 4.8 per carry. He's also got 41 receptions and he's got 6 touchdowns. This is an animal. This is an absolute animal. And this is why Kirk Cousins is also dealing, because when you've got a running back like Bijian Robinson who can set it up, pound, 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 play action, we're throwing that ball over the top. That's when Kirk gets super lethal, when the Falcons are able to get their running back going. Okay, other players to watch for the Atlanta Falcons. Oh, was I just showing you Kyle Pitts? Is that my bad? Yeah. All right. Anyways, I showed you Kyle Pitts. I showed you Bijan Robinson. But let's talk about Kyle Pitts here for a second. Kyle Pitts is another tight end that came in, was super heralded. Tight ends do not get drafted in the first round very often. If you do get drafted in the first round as a tight end, you pretty much should be on a Hall of Fame type of trajectory. That's what they're telling you, because tight ends are not valued that well. Kyle Pitts has been a little bit of a frustration in his first few years, but he's a dangerous football player, man. We all know the type of speed, the type of athleticism that he's got. Over the years, this Denver Broncos team has really struggled to cover tight ends. I think that they're a whole lot better at it this year. Ironically, with Justin Simmons filling in there for Alex Singleton, Justin's a little bit more athletic than Alex Singleton was. He's not necessarily a better linebacker than Alex Singleton, but I think he's a little bit more athletic. So hopefully we've got a decent matchup there. Cody Barton, we don't want him getting matched up one-on-one on Kyle Pitts more than we've got to. And you never know. You might bring Pat Surtain down into the box every now and then to cover Kyle. All that being said, Kyle is not screaming he is the elite talent right now. He's having a very good, productive season that if you compound it, if you look towards what this will look like at the end of the season, the stats should look pretty damn good. I mean, he's on track to have a borderline 1,000-yard season. He's already got 485 yards with 34 receptions. He's got 3 touchdowns to go with it. So the Falcons have got playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. They've got a tremendous quarterback. They've got a tremendous running back, and they've got a tremendous tight end. That's a recipe for a pretty good offense. Good thing is Denver Broncos have a hell of a defense. We'll get more into the matchup on the between the offense and the defense in a little bit. Okay, moving on here. Obviously, I had to put Justin Simmons on this list. Justin Simmons making his return back to Mile High. And Justin has been talking to the media quite a bit this week. They've been asking him about his return. Obviously, Justin is very proud of his stay here with the Denver Broncos. He said he'll be a Denver Bronco for life. He's out there in Atlanta saying all the right things. Of course, he wants to come in and he wants to beat the Broncos' brains in because now he's an Atlanta Falcon. Justin Simmons, just a little side squirrel note here. Justin Simmons' career with the Denver Broncos has a Ring of Fame resume, and it's very unlikely that he'll make the Ring of Fame because of the lack of the overall team success. And I actually feel bad for Justin because he came in at a really bad time in Denver Broncos history. And he was nothing but the loyal soldier, a tremendous football player, multiple Pro Bowler, multiple All-Pro. And he gets in, and the Broncos end up letting him go right when it looks like the Broncos are starting to figure things out. So he comes in when things are bad. He exits on the last bad year, and in his first year that he's gone, the Broncos finally seem like they're heading in the right direction. So I feel bad for Justin. Justin still makes Denver his home. I believe he'll live here forever. I've talked to him a few times. They absolutely love living here in Denver, Colorado. So it'll be good to get Justin Simmons back. Does he have a huge advantage playing the Broncos? Not really, because he didn't play with Bo Nix. He did play under Sean Payton and certainly understands what Sean wants to do offensively. But if Russell Wilson was still our quarterback, I might feel like it was a bigger advantage for Justin Simmons. I'm not overly concerned about Justin knowing the Broncos personnel, certainly not worried about him knowing the Broncos play calls. So much has changed offensively for the Broncos over the last year that Justin's knowledge of this team is going to be limited. You know, when I got traded to the Seahawks, my first game as a Seattle Seahawk was right back here in Mile High playing against the Denver Broncos. So a week after I'm out of the Broncos, I'm now in Seattle. I'm playing in Denver. They bring me up to the board. I've got a meeting with the entire coaching staff, one-on-one, Tyler Polumbus and the entire Seahawks coaching staff. They put me up on the whiteboard. They asked me for all the state secrets that I know, the code words, offense, any sort of tells I could give. And yeah, I sung like a canary because I was now a Seattle Seahawk. So I'm sure Raheem Morris and the Atlanta Falcons will lean on Justin, asking him what information he might have, but I think it's overrated. Not overly concerned with it. All right, moving on here. Injuries in this game. The Falcons injury report is quite lengthy at this point in the week. Now, this is pretty normal at this point of the season to have a very lengthy injury report, and as you get closer to the game, it usually gets smaller and smaller. So we'll see how many serious injuries they've got, but if you look at this list, I mean, I didn't count it up, but that looks like it's about 17 or 18 different names. I apologize, I did not put up today's updated one, but I've got it in front of me. A handful of these players did have full participation as of today. I'll tell you the players that did not practice on Wednesday, nor did they practice on Thursday. Mike Hughes, their corner, has not practiced. D. Alford, their corner, has not another corner. Antonio Hamilton, another corner, has not practiced. James Smith-Williams, a defensive lineman, has not practiced. Charlie Warner, their tight end, a backup tight end, has not practiced. And Taquan Graham has not practiced. They've got a very, very lengthy injury report, whereas the Broncos on the other side of that thing, the Broncos have got 6 guys listed on their injury report, and all of them practiced in some form or fashion. PJ Locke, Josh Reynolds, Drew Sanders, Delarian Turner-Yell, Zach Allen, and Brandon Jones are all the Broncos listed on the injury report, and all but Brandon Jones were listed as a full participant in today's practice. Brandon Jones was the only one not listed as a full participant. He was listed as limited. So I would say the edge goes to the Broncos here in terms of the health of their team. The Falcons look like they are very, very banged up. So even the people that did practice for the Falcons, I only listed out the ones that did not practice. There's a handful of very, very important football players on that team that is listed as limited in practice. Grady Jarrett is one of them. Grady is a phenomenal defensive lineman. Drake London was a full participant. But even Kirk Cousins is listed on that injury report. All right, cool. They're banged up, pretty normal. If you were to ask me what's at this point of the season, if that's normal or not, I would absolutely say it is. If anything, I would say it's abnormal how few players the Denver Broncos have on their injury report. Look, as you look at the Falcons season here, let me see if I can pull it up for you. Shoot, I thought I pulled it in there. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. But as you look at the Falcons season, it's been a weird year for them. They've had some good wins and they've had some bad losses. Really reminds me a lot of the Denver Broncos. Look, the season started out for the Falcons with a loss to the Steelers. Okay. Lost that game 18-10. Then they come out and they beat the Eagles, a really good football team. The Eagles are having a great season this year, and the Falcons bested them. They lose to the Chiefs just slightly. They barely beat the Saints, a bad football team. So this is what I'm saying. They've got some really good wins. They've got some so-so wins. They've got some bad losses. They barely got by a really, really bad New Orleans Saints team. Then they go out and they beat a good Buccaneers team. They beat the Panthers, bad football team. They get smoked by the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks are not very good this year. The NFC West is a laughingstock this year. Not a laughingstock, but they're all middling. They're all about 500. And the Seahawks are not a very good football team. Falcons get smoked by them. Falcons go and beat the Bucs again. So they sweep the Bucs this year. They barely get by the Cowboys, bad football team, 27-21, and then they lose to the Saints. So they're coming off of a loss to the New Orleans Saints, who we all know is a terrible football team this year. So what does this mean? Well, it means they're a roller coaster, man. That's what they are. The Falcons team is set up kind of similar to the Broncos, but in reverse. The Denver Broncos have got a great defense and a so-so offense. The Falcons have got a great offense and a so-so defense. So it's flipped. Matter of fact, I would actually say the Falcons have a bad defense. It's not a so-so defense. The offense... Let's start with all right, you know what? Actually, let's start with the defense. Let's start with the defense for the Falcons. So the Falcons defense right now, currently ranked 24th in the NFL. They're giving up 352 yards per game. They're tied for 20th in rush defense, giving up nearly 130 yards per game on the ground. So should be a great opportunity for Audric Estime to go out there and establish himself. Audric Estime got the bulk of the carries last week. Javonte Williams got a carry. That's a statement. The cat's not going in the bag on that one. The cat is out of the bag. Audric Estime is now taking over as the workhorse for the Denver Broncos. And it will be a great opportunity for Audric to go up against a pretty bad rush defense for the Falcons. As bad as they are in their rush defense, Falcons are even worse in their pass defense. 24th in the NFL, giving up 223 yards per game. And the most important stat, really the only stat that matters on defense, the Falcons are giving up 23.6 points per game. Okay. That's good because the Broncos offense ain't very good. Although we've had some sparks from Bo Nix and we had one hell of a drive to finish off the game against Kansas City, the Broncos offense overall is struggling as much as the Falcons defense is struggling. The Broncos offense currently ranked 24th in the NFL. Okay, so you've got the 24th offense going up against the 24th defense. That's a whole lot of mediocrity. This should be a game for Bo Nix to finally have a complete football game. We've had a lot of flashes from Bo Nix, and this is not me knocking Bo Nix because he's turning me into a believer. He is. I know one thing about Bo Nix. That dude ain't afraid of a big moment now. So I'm not knocking him when I have analysis. Let's make that clear because people get all they get all bent out of shape. Can I say that anymore? They get all bent out of shape when you give analysis on Bo Nix. He has yet to give you a complete football game outside of the Carolina game. And he kind of tossed that one out because they were so bad. But if you want to give it to him, that's cool. He had a great game against Carolina. The Kansas City game, he had a good half. And then the Broncos had 10 total yards of offense in the second half going into that final possession, and then they exploded. So this is a week you say, okay, Broncos offense, which is only averaging 19.7 points per game, this is the time to get off the schneid and start having some success, start to finish. That's what we need from Bo Nix. That's the next step for him. He's got to go a start to finish football game. We've had a lot of flashes. We're getting closer, and this one matters. This one matters a lot because the Falcons have got a great offense. Now, fortunately, the Broncos have got a great defense. So let's flip things, all right? I just gave you the matchup between the Falcons defense and the Broncos offense. That on paper, that is an absolute stalemate. 24th offense versus the 24th defense. That's what it says on paper. There's no statistical advantage for either one of those teams. If anything, I would give a slight edge to the Denver Broncos, but there's not a huge edge. However, when we talk about the other side of things, okay, so let's talk about the Falcons offense versus the Denver Broncos defense. The Falcons offense is pretty good. Pretty dang good. They're fifth total in the NFL. This is crazy. I mean, we are looking at, what do they call that? Not clones, but when they're like the polar opposites, but the exact opposite. Palumbo's stupid. I can't think of the word. But we had the 24th offense versus the 24th defense. Check this out. We've now got the fifth offense in the NFL versus the fifth defense in the NFL. Everything is doppelgangers. That's it. I got it. I'm proud of myself. Doppelgangers. These teams are like doppelgangers and everything, but on the opposite sides of the football field. Okay, so again, on paper, not a huge statistical advantage for either team between the Falcons offense and Denver's defense. But let's talk about that Falcons offense, okay? So they are fifth in the NFL with 375 yards per game. They have got a very good rushing game, not necessarily an elite rushing attack, but they're currently ranked 12th in the NFL. They're averaging 124 yards per game on the ground. And the Denver Broncos defense is currently giving up 103 yards. So maybe a slight lean to the Falcons in that matchup between the rush defense and the rush offense. Offensively for the Falcons, let's talk about passing. They're fifth in the NFL in passing. Pretty dang good. And a large part, that's because of the running game. So if you can slow down the Falcons' running game, I think you will slow down the Falcons' passing game because they are very, very reliant on that play action. Take away the run, the play action, in theory, should be less effective, although it's a little bit of a misnomer. You really don't have to run the football as well as people think to have effective play action, but it certainly helps. So let's focus in on stopping a really good running back. Hopefully that means you can slow down a really good quarterback. In points per game, the Falcons are averaging getting 23.8 points per game. I know I'm tossing out a whole lot of minutia at you right now, a whole lot of numbers, but I just find it fascinating how these two teams lined up. They're absolute doppelgangers and opposite sides of the football field. Amazing. There is no statistical advantage for either football team when you look at the matchups between offense and defense. Crazy. That's why when I talked at the beginning of this stream that Vegas has got this for the Broncos as 2.5-point favorites, that's why. They're literally calling it a coin flip. That's what this is. Okay? The Falcons offense, before I move on to the importance of the game for the Broncos, the Falcons offense is getting called by a Colorado native, Zach Robinson, good friend of mine. He was my teammate out there with the Seattle Seahawks. Zach Robinson went to Chatfield High School. Zach Robinson then went to Oklahoma State and was the quarterback at Oklahoma State. He was a dual threat quarterback, had a fantastic college career, had a short-lived NFL run, but probably played 4 or 5 years in the NFL. And now he's the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. He is running West Coast offense. He is running all the stuff that we are accustomed to so well here in Denver, but with a few variations to it. Because Kirk Cousins has lost some mobility with that Achilles injury, and based off the fact that he's like 37 years old, however old he is, he's now running things out of pistol. The West Coast offense is always run from underneath center whenever you can. They're running underneath pistol because of Kirk's mobility. Now, it reminds me of a lot of what we had to do in 2015 with Peyton Manning. Payton was accustomed to playing out of gun. Kubiak wanted him to play underneath center. They kind of butted heads for a few weeks, trying to find some happy middle ground. They landed on the pistol. It usually makes the running game more difficult when you run out of the pistol because it's all about angles. I won't go into the weeds on it and try to explain it all too much. Just take me for my word. It's usually more difficult to run the football out of pistol, but the Falcons are overcoming that. So, fascinating matchup here, man. Is it a beatable team? Heck yeah. Is it a team that the Broncos could lose to very easily? You're darn right it is. Here's why this game matters. Okay? This game matters for a lot of reasons for the Broncos if they want to make the playoffs. First off, I'm already worried about the Broncos' fragile mindset. When you are a team that is learning to get rid of bad juju, the hardest thing to get out of the building is the expectation of failure to come at some point. There's been a lot of bad vibes here in Denver for many, many years, and this Broncos team is on the rise. However, they are coming off a 2-game slide against 2 very good football teams, and this Chiefs game is a little bit interesting because I do think it's got a small moral victory vibe going on with it, but they are coming off a 2-game slide. Is this team mentally strong enough to bounce back from a 2-game slide and not let that turn into a 3-game slide? If they do let it turn into a 3-game slide, that terrifies me for the remainder of the season for the Broncos. The Falcons are coming into town with I believe they got one more win than the Broncos. I should know that off the top of my head. I think they've got 6 and the Broncos have got 5. But the Broncos need to find 5 more wins before this season is all said and done if they want to be a playoff team. And it's amazing that I could be sitting here at this point in the season and say it would be an outright disappointment if the Broncos didn't make the playoffs this year, when after week 2, playoffs was an absolute joke. I mean, you could have given me $1 million to bet on the Broncos to make the playoffs after week 2. It was an impossibility. And now it would be an outright disappointment if they don't make the playoffs. It wouldn't make the season a failure because the season will be defined by Bo Nix. That's what this season, when it's all said and done, it's defined by Bo Nix's development. How does he look when it's all said and done? But it would hurt a lot if the Broncos don't make the playoffs because we're all in playoff mindset, right? So if you look at the Broncos schedule, and I know I've played this game a handful of times if you guys are regulars on my stream, but if you look at the games that are remaining for the Broncos, here's the games you got to win, okay? Let's put the Falcons to the side for a second, all right? You got to beat the Raiders, terrible football team. You got to beat the Browns, terrible football team. You got to beat the Colts, not a terrible football team, but not a good football team, okay? So those are the 3 games that you have to win. You got to win those 3 because those are bad football teams. And then you got 3 games left. You got the Chargers, you got the Bengals, you got the Broncos. That Chargers game scares me. I think the Chargers are going to be peaking by the time we get faced against the Chargers in week 15? By week 15, I think that Chargers team is going to be in peak condition. Justin Herbert, Harbaugh, they're finding their rhythm here. I don't feel great about it. Certainly don't feel great about playing the Bengals at the end of the year. Nobody wants to face Joe Burrow at the end of the year when he's trying to get into the playoff hunt. So those are 2 games that I can't count on. And then that Chiefs game could be interesting. The final game of the season could be interesting because if the Chiefs lock up the number 1 seed, well, hopefully they don't play their starters, and hopefully the Broncos can find a cheap win there. And maybe that could be one of the 5. But I just gave you 2 games, 3 games really, okay? Because we can't count on the fact the Chiefs have got the number 1 seed locked up. That team's going to lose. They're going to lose a couple games. They're probably going to lose this weekend against the Bills. So I don't actually think the Chiefs will be in the driver's seat in week 17. I think you're going to have to play the Chiefs starters, okay? So let's back up, right? I said we got to find 5 wins, right? Well, you got the Raiders, you got the Browns, you got the Colts. Those are all kind of the quote-unquote gimme games that you absolutely have to win. And then you got to find a win probably against the Chargers and the Falcons. Those are probably your other 2 wins, because I'm damn sure not banking on the fact that you're going to beat the Bengals in week 16, and I'm damn sure not going to bank on the fact that you're going to beat the Chiefs, despite the fact we almost beat them. I know, but I would assume the Chiefs are going to be peaking in week 17. I'm not banking on any of those games, right? So that's it. It's as simple as that. We got to find wins against the Falcons, the Raiders, the Browns, the Colts, and the Chargers. That's how you make the playoffs. If you lose to the Falcons team, there is 0 margin for error left. None. This is a must-win football game. The Denver Broncos have to beat the Atlanta Falcons. It's a middling team that is nearly identical to you in every single statistical category. And if you lose the game, you're scrambling. If you lose the game, now you got to find a makeup game. Now you got to find a makeup game against the Bengals. You want to count on the Broncos beating the Bengals to get in the playoffs? I don't. You want to find a makeup game against the Chiefs in week 17, especially if the Chiefs don't have the number 1 seed locked up and they've got something to play for? I dang sure don't want to bank on that. We're running out of options here, folks. Got to beat the Atlanta Falcons. And I think they will. I do. I think the Broncos are going to beat the Falcons. I'm not a big moral victory guy, but that was pretty damn close to moral victory last weekend, wasn't it? There's no such thing as moral victory for a team that is already on top. No such thing. But I do believe in moral victories for up-and-coming football teams, because up-and-coming football teams, it's not always about wins and losses. It's about a belief. It's about a culture, and it's establishing who you are, finding that identity, the DNA of your team, right? And we found out last weekend that Bo Nix has got the right DNA. He's not fully developed. Maybe that DNA is still a little baby, but he's got the right genetic makeup to not be afraid of big moments in this league. That drive at the end of the game was beautiful. Flat out beautiful. I wish that drive came with a semblance of offense in the second half that just disappeared entirely, but the final drive was beautiful. And he was robbed of his defining moment, his breakthrough moment in the NFL. We're breaking news, ESPN, all over the place. Rookie Bo Nix goes and beats Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. It would be all over the place. Bo Nix still won the Pepsi Offensive Rookie of the Week award, something along those lines. I forget what the exact award was. He still won that award, which I chuckled at a little bit because I'm not accustomed to winning awards in games that you lose. But apparently other people are looking at that game like it's a moral victory also. So I like the mindset of this team. I don't know. There's no way for me to know. I don't know if they're in a fragile state off of a 2-game slide or if they've gained confidence. If I was a betting man, I'd tell you that the team gained a whole lot of confidence against the Kansas City Falcons. What did I say? Kansas City Falcons? Kansas City Chiefs, the Atlanta Falcons coming in this weekend. I would bet that they gained a whole lot of confidence. So that's it, folks. You want to beat the Chiefs in Week 17? I do. I just don't want to count on it. You want to beat the Bengals in Week 16? I do. I just don't want to count on it. Let's go out there and let's beat the Atlanta Falcons, okay? So, fans, if you feel like you are one of those fans that can help the team win, bring it. You got your dirty underwear you got to wear, your special underwear, put it on. You want to put your socks on inside out for this game? This is one of those games. This is going to, this game, the importance of this game is going to be under-discussed in the media this week, because I'm not sure everybody fully understands how important it is for the Broncos to win this game. And you know what? We're going to find out where the Broncos are also, because there's kind of 3 different categories in the NFL of teams. You've got the elite championship level teams. That's the big leagues, right? You got the bottom feeders, and there's a lot of bottom feeders in the NFL this year. More bottom feeders than there's ever been. Last I counted, and I might be off by a team or two here, but there were 11 teams in the NFL with 3 losses or less. That is nuts. A third of the NFL has only got 3 wins. So there's a crazy amount of bottom feeders, okay? So the Broncos are not in the big leagues. They're not with the elites. They're definitely not down with the bottom feeders either. So those are 2 categories. Then the third category is parity. The final category in the NFL is all the teams that have parity. And that's where the Broncos are hanging out right now. The Falcons are hanging out with the teams with parity. The Broncos are hanging out there. And we're not going to get out of that category this year. There's 0 chance of the Broncos getting to the big leagues this year. But they can establish their DNA so they can get there next year, right? But the good news is, for the Broncos, you've got 3 bad teams left in the Raiders, the Browns, the Colts. That's a great opportunity to go on a 3-game winning streak. You beat the Falcons, that's a 4-game winning streak. Now we got a whole lot of good mojo going on. All right, that's it. I apologize to you guys that was waiting for the Chiefs All-22 film. I always put that out on Tuesdays. I had a lot of kids. I got kids, okay? That's what happened. I got kids. I was not able to get the Chiefs film out. I promise you that won't happen again. It's actually really important to me that I stay on schedule for all you guys that have been so awesome in supporting Mount Polumbus Speaks. If you've not gone over to my YouTube channel right now, you really need to go check it out. I know the majority of you guys right now are watching on Twitter because I can see the numbers of where everybody's watching from. And you're missing out if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel because I don't do all my videos streaming. I put out a lot of content, whether it's all 22s, whether it's post-game reviews, whether I'm talking to my buddies in the league, whatever. There's a ton of video-specific content that goes directly to YouTube. So if you're watching on Twitter right now, please go into my bio. The link for my YouTube is in my bio. And if you would go subscribe, that would be huge. If you want to really help me grow, please go over to YouTube, hit like, and give me a comment. It's amazing what that does for the algorithm. That will really help my channel grow. The more it grows, the more content I'm going to be able to put out for you guys. So I love you guys. Apologize for missing out on the Chiefs All 22. I promise you I will not miss out on the Falcons All 22. Until tomorrow, we will see you guys later.